Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod. What a week! The U.S. Central Bank made its first interest rate cut all year. We have FOMC voting member and head of the Minneapolis Fed, Neel Kashkari, on the health of the U.S. economy.
We're not okay with 3% inflation. I'm confident that we are going to get inflation back down to 2%, but these tariffs have pushed inflation back up.
President Trump and China's President Xi set to speak today about a possible deal to keep TikTok from going dark in the U.S. Security expert Chris Krebs.
The law is clear. It requires a complete divestiture of TikTok from ByteDance from China.
And just who will own the wildly popular app?
If you don't want someone deciding what you're allowed to see, it could change every 4 years.
Plus, the iPhone 17 goes on sale today. We're on the ground at a New York Apple store with CEO Tim Cook.
We are so happy with what we see. It's early going, but we're very happy.
And the media fallout from ABC's benching of Jimmy Kimmel continues.
A lot to blame for the mess we're in and the polarization that we're in and the idea that we're getting misinformation and being polarized and being pushed to different sides and all of those things.
It's Friday, September 19th, 2025. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Andrew by in 3, 2, 1. Up and Andrew. Cue. Here's Mike.
Good morning. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live at the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Andrew Sorkin along with Joe Kernen, the one and only. Becky is off today. We got a lot to talk about, though.
Well,
boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
Been jet setting around the country once again. Where were you flying in and out of?
I was flying in and out of Los Angeles as we.
No,
Newark.
Here.
Newark.
How? Any?
Not bad.
Really?
Not bad.
That's what Scott Kirby said. Last month was bad for both of us. Back when Becky was in, you were good.
I had a good experience, and want to thank the nice people at United.
Excellent. Yeah, it's good to keep them on your good side in Newark. And you were hobnobbing with like Federer and KD
and a whole bunch of sports folks. Gary Bettman.
You did some off the record stuff too, I think.
On the record.
Does that mean we can't talk about that? I mean, whisper to me what else was going on, like Connie Chung.
I still think that we need to have a separate digital show.
I agree.
Called During the Break.
Yeah. Can we curse?
On that show? Yes.
F&A?
Absolutely. Now to the fallout from comedian Jimmy Kimmel's comments about the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk and ABC pulling Kimmel's show off the air. President Trump suggesting the government might revoke the broadcast licenses of TV networks that are, in his words, against him. Now that followed a suggestion from Trump's FCC chairman Brendan Carr that ABC station licenses could be at risk. Wall Street Journal now reporting that Kimmel was planning to address Carr's comments on his show on Wednesday night, but after meeting with Kimmel, Disney Entertainment executive Dana Walden thought Kimmel's approach could actually inflame that situation. The Journal saying that Walden met with Disney CEO Bob Iger, and the two executives decided to pull Kimmel's show. That was literally as the audience was getting ready to apparently walk in, taking the White House to task for this alleged censorship. There's been a whole number of comedians saying all sorts of things. I want to show you what Stephen Colbert had to say about it.
If ABC thinks that this is going to satisfy the regime, they are woefully naive. And clearly, they've never read the children's book, If You Give a Mouse a Kimmel.
Okay, so I haven't got to see you.
No.
In a good 48 hours.
No.
Maybe more.
I haven't.
So tell me what you think.
I'm not going to move into a corner and completely, as I say, back myself into a corner. I don't like that they didn't let him implode on his own, which I think he was in the process of doing. I think we can all agree that the comments themselves, in the words of the Journal, false, callous, and stupid, or at least obnoxious. He certainly could have apologized, I think. Disney, and when guys like Sonnenfeld start making sense to me, I have a problem. He said Iger did absolutely the right thing based on brand damage, with or without Brendan Carr and FCC. And that's the thing that we forget is those next star stations are in places where, I don't know, there's probably 30 of them, and they're not in the big cities. And I think that if they had just left him on, that ratings would have imploded, the groundswell would have gotten even greater as it does. Now, you've basically created a martyr for the left. The right has, it has just been a little bit over a week since poor Charlie was assassinated, fired upon, not fired, as someone over at Fox said. And now each side, there are people who mourn what happened to Charlie Kirk, and there's people who mourn what happened to Jimmy Kimmel, and I don't think there's a lot of overlap there, which is sad. Now, I'm not going to say there's people celebrating. There are, but I'm not going to say celebrating what happened to Charlie Kirk. And then there are people celebrating what happened to Jimmy Kimmel, and I'm not going to say I'm one of them, but I'm pretty damn close. Here's the thing about Brendan Carr is he has teeth, because the FCC on public airwaves, they can do things, and you could make an argument that Jimmy Kimmel hasn't told a joke since Trump came down that escalator. It's been 10 years since he told a normal joke. And is that okay for all the next star people in the middle of the country that are watching? And supposedly the public interest has to be part of what you do on public airways. Was their entire side ever represented on Jimmy Kimmel? Was he trotted out? Jasmine Crockett, Adam Schiff, Barack Obama, every night. Never Ted Cruz, never a conservative has graced the set of Jimmy Kimmel. Is that okay? That's okay. I don't give a crap. I'm asleep. But I just wish they would have let this all happen on its own. Are we headed for the UK? I know you're worried about. See, you know why I have a lot of hair? Because even when Biden was doing things, I never really set it on fire.
Right.
And
Are we headed towards the UK? Is that what you said?
I don't think we're headed to that model. In fact, Trump and the vice president are both over there complaining about what goes on with free speech over in the UK. Hopefully, we're not headed there. I don't think we are at this. But I don't want next on my Twitter feed, I don't want genocide to the Jews on there. So I'm starting to think there is a time and place where anything doesn't go. You know what I mean? It's anything goes. Do you think that we should regulate parts of the social media world more than we are right now? I think maybe we should. Starting to think that maybe we should. And I'm glad Penelope sent me something about when you listen, you've been listening the entire time, and I admire this a lot, and now I'm going to let you talk, and I'm going to listen the entire time. I might be making faces, and I might be hand motions that probably are inappropriate at this hour, but I'm going to let you.
So I think you and I will agree that there's something amiss in social media land. That to me is the lowest hanging fruit,
and somewhat to blame for the mess we're in.
I think a lot to blame for the mess we're in and the polarization that we're in and the idea that we're getting misinformation and being polarized and being pushed to different sides and all of those things. 100%. And I think that the extremeness of everything is what seems to work on social media, and so we're getting reinforced with all of that. So I think we agree that there's something wrong in social media that's not good.
Unfortunately, it's what's wrong in ourselves. At least some of us in this.
Sure. Country. Oh, I think we're to blame. I mean,
right.
But I also think that systems they're creating an addiction because they know how to take advantage of us.
They exacerbate it.
They do.
Exacerbate. Someone once said exacerbate.
They do. And then the second question, I don't know if I agree about the free speech is a very interesting idea. I believe in free speech, and I believe that folks who can sit on the corner and scream their head off and do all those types of things. Then there's the question of whether it gets echoed and amplified in all sorts of other ways, whether, here on cable or whether it's a broadcast network or whatnot, versus social media. Is there a difference? I think there probably is in some responsibility. I don't think that Jimmy Kimmel's comments were good comments. They were
much worse than social media.
Were terrible.
Well, they were.
But on the larger question about the FCC and how they regulate speech and different kinds of speech, I always thought it was the FCC's job to get involved when, do you remember when there was the Janet Jackson wardrobe malfunction at the Super Bowl.
Complete accident.
And that, whether it was an accident or not, with Justin Timberlake, there was a view at that time that the public should not have been seeing a nude breast during the Super Bowl.
It wasn't totally nude. There was a pasty.
It was. And that was something that, to me, if the FCC wanted to get involved, that sort of made sense. But I'm not sure.
Now you sound like the conservatives that you don't like.
But I'm not sure
you see a little T, and that's bad. But talking about some poor guy that got his head blown off.
No. What I'm saying is that, but the idea of policing a certain type of speech, and for companies, look, I agree with you. Nexstar, I think there's two things going on with Nexstar, and this is why everything's not always black and white. I think
understand.
Nexstar has that deal in front of the FCC, and so they're thinking about Trump and the way he thinks about it. And there's also the commercial interests that I think that weighed on this. By the way, I think that clearly is what weighed on Sinclair, I imagine, and also the politics of Sinclair itself.
And I don't know whether Disney's got anything pending, but they certainly were. I think they were certainly worried about brand damage, and I think that
they've got Fubu. Yeah, the sports network.
But I don't think. I think that this almost, they're like, God, this is great. We get to do this and blame it on Trump. And we were going to do it anyway because this guy is starting to be more of a problem than a
you think that Disney was going to take out Kimmel anyway?
Someday.
Oh, someday, yes.
And I still think Kimmel's coming back next week.
I think Kimmel might come back.
Apple's iPhone 17 going on sale today. Fans lining up from Beijing to London to get their hands on the latest piece of hardware. And early signals show strong demand for the iPhone 17 lineup, but Apple's still grappling with AI issues, increasing competition, and we're going to take you live to Apple's flagship store here in New York City for that opening.
What is happening at the flagship store right now? Jim Cramer is there with one special man named Tim Cook.
What?
Good morning.
Tim reminds me I should have an iPad. Andrew, thank you so much. We are really at Central, at Ground Central for the new phones. Different vibe. What's it feel like? 3 different players.
Oh, it feels so exciting. It's our Super Bowl. It's the most important day of the year for us. Everybody comes out from the Apple community, and there's no place I'd rather be than Fifth Avenue on this day.
Okay, so Pro, Max, Air, all very different. Tell us why we should get each one.
The Pro is the most pro phone we've ever shipped. It's a totally new design, incredible performance, camera next level. I mean, if you think you've gotten good photos and videos off your iPhone before, this takes it to a new level. The Air, thin, light, feels like it's going to fly away in your hand. It's so wonderful. The design is unbelievable. You literally cannot feel it. It's so light. But it's a pro phone. This is what's so spectacular about it. It's pro performance in a thin package. And then the consumer product, unbelievable as well. Dramatic step up from last year.
Okay, now people tell me the reviews over and over again, there's always this caveat that they're expensive. And yet I see the trade-in value to be far higher than I remember. Is trade-in better? And when you add in the incentives from the phone companies, I don't see any increase even from tariffs.
Trade-in is great. There's no increase for tariffs in the prices, to be totally clear. And you can get a phone for free today with a plan from your favorite carrier.
Now, right here, do you have supply? In Europe, they didn't have supply for everything.
We keep supply in the store for walk-in customers and to serve the pre-orders. So there's supply today to get.
Okay, got some numbers from Nanjing, from Mumbai, Beijing, Delhi. Dubai is the one that has the longest lines right now.
Dubai is incredible. China was incredible. We are so happy with what we see. It's early going, but we're very happy.
Okay, how about adjacencies? AirPod 3, people very excited about the Siri translation.
Yeah, live translation, 4 times ANC compared to the original AirPods Pro. You'll see a dramatic change in the AirPods Pro if you've been using it. It's to die for.
Okay, watch, hypertension. Any insurance companies contact you. This is a great way to be able to cut down the silent killer.
Yeah, hypertension, incredible. We think we're going to notify 1 million people that they have hypertension this year alone. Over 1 billion people have it around the world, so there's a lot of people to notify.
Okay, a lot of people saying, well, it's, what are they doing with AI? But do you find anybody holding back buying, given the fact that I haven't seen it around the world?
We have AI everywhere in the phone, everywhere in the AirPods. Live translation is AI. We just don't call it as such.
Right. Okay. Now, what do you think about what are you hearing about the selfie camera? Because I've seen many times, you probably do it again, grab selfies, but we're cut off in half. We look like this.
Yeah.
How have you changed that?
Well, with center stage, you can enter, more people can enter the selfie, and it will readjust and recalibrate for the landscape size. It's unbelievable. And you can hold the phone in portrait mode, and it will take a selfie in landscape mode. You no longer have to turn your phone. It's incredible.
How about the phone the picture within a picture?
Oh yeah, that's unbelievable too. If you want to FaceTime somebody from a concert, for example, and show yourself and your excitement as well as the band. These things are things that some people didn't even know they wanted, but now they can't imagine their life without.
All right, so I'm getting a sense, there's a different vibe because there's a little bit more than people realize when it comes to the 17 family.
Yes. Yeah, the 17 family, it is a huge leap. Every year we move forward. This year is a huge step forward.
All right, now, what is your sense about yesterday? We saw this NVIDIA tie-up. Now, NVIDIA and Intel have not been yours. Will you look at those again? You were over in Europe. Will you look at what they might be able to offer you?
Sure. Competition is very good for the foundry business. We'd love to see Intel come back.
Okay, now the president's talking about having $550 billion that he's gotten from other countries to do manufacturing. Tim, you're doing $550 billion. Do we have enough people?
$600 billion.
Right. Do you have enough people in this country to actually staff all these different places?
There's a lot of great people in America, and we're having training programs like the Manufacturing Academy that I'm visiting later today in Detroit.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we're putting a lot of energy in the education sector.
Now, when I look at this place, I'm thinking, and I've been with you for a couple of launches, there is a different vibe, but it's not empirical, it's anecdotal. I'm like, do you get it?
Oh, I get it. And I've been seeing it all night, during the night, checking the lines in Australia, checking the lines in China, checking the lines in Thailand. It's incredible. It feels wonderful. India.
And how about when we saw each other last Friday, you said, look, the pre-orders are starting. How did it build? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
I'm very happy with what we're seeing right now. It's early going, but I'm very happy.
Do you look at what people were projecting versus what's happening? Because that's what Wall Street does. I think it's probably a meaningless gesture for you.
I always look at what we're projecting, not what others are.
All right, fair enough. Well,
all right.
Tim,
it's so wonderful to see you.
Oh, it's great to see you.
It's so great to see you, and great to see your audience.
I'm going to get all three. All right?
Great. I love that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, thank you for bringing us that interview, and thank Tim for us. I think we've all been fascinated by the new devices, what's happening in the world, and yes, as you mentioned, the AirPod 3s, which I think I got to put on my wish list.
And one of the greatest things is that I don't know if we always knew retail stores were going to be in. I don't like shopping, and I like going to the Apple store. They got it down. To the guy.
Yes, they do.
The guy or gal meets you right at the front and sends you exactly where you're in, you're out. It's good. It's good. And I need help. I need new batteries because I can't stand the Jerry Seinfeld when you get to 20% battery and you're like.
That's why you're gonna have to get this new phone.
Crawling
you're
along
have to get
in
this
the
new
desert.
phone.
I'm dying. I can't take it.
Cheese will be next.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, inside the Fed's rate cut with a member of the Federal Open Market Committee. He was in the room where it happened and where a White House-approved new member of the Board of Governors was confirmed hours before its start. Minneapolis Fed President Neel Kashkari joins us.
This was like any other transition where somebody comes in and everybody says, hey, welcome to the table. We look forward to hearing your contributions. And then everybody went about their business as normal. And so what was remarkable about this meeting is how unremarkable it was.
This is Squawk Pod.
Stand by, Joe. In 3, 2, 1, his mic cue.
Time flies. You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC. I'm Joe Kernen, along with Andrew Ross Sorkin. Becky is off today, and during the break. During the break. That's
During
right.
the break. That's my idea. What do you think? A show called During the Break.
The title is good. In a new essay, Minneapolis Fed President Neel Kashkari says he sees 2 more rate cuts coming from the central bank this year. Steve Liesman joins us now with Mr. Kashkari. Hey, Steve, and hey, Neel.
Good morning.
Thank you, Joe. Let's bring in Mr. Kashkari, president of the Minneapolis Fed. Neel, let's talk about your essay this morning, which is fascinating. And I just want to ask you first about one of the things that you say in your piece, which is that you're concerned that there could be some erosion of the belief in the Fed's commitment to the 2% target. How much should we worry that you guys are cutting rates while you're away from your target? And not only that, don't forecast you hit your target until 2028.
Well, Steve, I don't see the erosion yet. Thankfully, it's not there in the data, but it's something that we need to work extra hard to explain to the public why we're making the actions that we're making, why we're cutting rates right now in light of the elevated inflation that we've all been experiencing for 4 years. So I identified it in my essay as a risk that what could cause inflation expectations to rise if people believe that what we call our reaction function has changed and that we would somehow be okay with 3% inflation. We're not okay with 3% inflation. I'm confident that we are going to get inflation back down to 2%, but these tariffs have pushed inflation back up, and we're having to adjust policy to try to accommodate and keep the labor market strong at the same time.
So, Neel, the old saw is watch what they do, not what they say. What are you doing about bringing inflation back down?
Well, if we look at the underlying components, and I don't get into this as much into my essay, housing services inflation is on a very steady trajectory to come down. I've got a lot of confidence that housing inflation is going to continue to come down. Non-housing services inflation is slowly coming down. It's pretty tied to wage growth, and wages are on a downward trajectory. So I've got pretty good confidence that those 2 segments are going to continue to come down. The core goods inflation had actually ticked negative at the start of this year. That was very good news. It had been negative before the pandemic. They've now come up because of tariffs. And so it really comes down to, do you believe tariffs are a one-time effect or something more persistent? I'm getting more confident that it's more likely a one-time effect, but it's going to take a couple of years for it to play out.
Another thing you talk about in your essay is the concern that the erosion of Fed independence could lift inflation expectations. I get that concept theoretically, but you don't really see it in the bond market. What's the source of that concern, and why do you think the bond market doesn't seem to care about it?
Well, I talked to a lot of market participants. I talked to folks up on Capitol Hill on both sides of the aisle. I think there's widespread appreciation for how important Fed independence is, both to keeping inflation expectations low and anchored, as also to defending the dollar. Those 2 things are tightly related. But I also think there's a lot of confidence on both sides of the aisle that Fed independence is important and will be protected, and that the courts also see it that way. You can see the Supreme Court's ruling a couple months ago defending Fed independence. So I think people are betting on the institutions of the country continuing to keep Fed independence, to keep it outside of the short-term political process. And certainly, I think we all want the same.
Neel, couldn't you argue that a cut in rates, a quarter point rate, I mean, if you connect the dots to, okay, money's cheaper, people are going to do more, that's going to cause the economy to heat up. I mean, way down the line, way down the road, maybe it's inflationary. But at face value, why doesn't it make certain things cheaper when interest rates go down? Why couldn't you say it actually might help inflation? And people have started to say that, haven't they, Liesman?
Well, I've heard those arguments, Joe. But if you look at mortgage rates as an example, there's a lot of different things that go into mortgage rates. I wrote in my essay that I think the neutral rate of interest has actually gone up. And if you look at over the past year, the FOMC has cut rates by more than 100 basis points. The long end of the curve has been pretty unresponsive to our short-term policy moves. That tells me it's possible that the neutral rate has gone up. And so it's possible that we cut the short end a little bit over the course of the next 6 months or a year, and it ends up not translating into much movement down on mortgage rates. So I don't think it's one for one that a cut in mortgage rates is going to make things immediately cheaper.
Right. There's other interest rate sensitive factors where it could be. And it's happened again. I mean, it's only 10 basis points, but ever since you cut, the 10-year has actually ticked higher with just barely with the yield. But no one, and including, I don't think, on the Fed, is anyone complaining about 4.1 on the 10-year after all the worries about, our status in the world and the reserve status. I mean, I would sign on for 4.13. Things are going great in the bond. Things are quiet. The vigilantes are, they're not making a peep with 38 trillion in debt.
Yeah, I do write about that in the essay, what the disconnect is from the signals that we're getting from the labor market, which is showing a slowdown. Wage growth, payroll employment, for example, all of those are pointing in one direction, and yet financial markets seem quite exuberant, whether it's the stock market or the bond market. Credit spreads are very low. Meme stocks are back. Those are more signals that tell me, hey, wait a second, maybe policy is not all that tight. Nonetheless, I do take seriously half of our dual mandate that the labor market is showing signs of weakening. And so I wrote in my piece that I thought it was appropriate to cut, but I'm not sure how many more cuts we have to get to before we get back to something that looks like neutral.
Neel, I have an almost personal question, being in the room, if you will. And I think everyone's always curious about independence and politics, and I know you've said repeatedly that politics don't enter these conversations. But with Steve Moran in the room, given his role at the White House and in this temporary role now, and being the outlier also in the room in terms of what he wanted to do with interest rates, did politics enter that conversation?
It really didn't. The FOMC has 19 participants, and every year there's always some turnover with presidents retiring or governors retiring and new people coming in. And this was like any other transition where somebody comes in and everybody says, hey, welcome to the table. We look forward to hearing your contributions. And then everybody went about their business as normal. And so what was remarkable about this meeting is how unremarkable it was. And then obviously the chairman achieved a tremendous consensus, not perfect consensus, but tremendous consensus at the end of the day, which I think is a credit to him.
Neel, I want to get a little down and dirty on the outlook for rates here, which is you say in your essay that you think there's 2 more rate cuts that you would support or forecast for through this year. If I do some simple math on that, and I have a 3% inflation rate, and I have a 3.625 funds rate, I have a real rate of 0.625. You're smiling because I think you think my math is good, right? And I end up essentially at neutral, right? So I'm not putting any additional downward pressure on inflation or breaking the economy there. Why is neutral by the end of the year with a 3% inflation rate the right number?
Well, as you know, we have to try to look forward. It's hard. We get a lot of criticism that we're always looking at data that's backward looking. We do try to look forward on what we can see. As I mentioned earlier, that I've got a lot of confidence housing inflation is going to continue to come down. Services inflation tied to wage growth is continuing to slow. And then I do believe, we're not hearing negotiations of ever higher tariff increases. So I think there's a lot of confidence that tariff rates are probably going to settle around near where they are, and it's going to take a couple of years for the economy to adjust to those. That gives me confidence that the underlying inflation in the economy is likely going to continue to head down. And if you think that monetary policy operates with a lag of a year or 2 years, we try to look ahead and say, where should policy be when these things settle out? And I think that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what most of my colleagues are trying to do.
What about the job market in terms of how weak is weak in this job market? If immigration is slowing down, you talk a bit about that in your essay, and you have a whole bunch of stuff that's happening on the administration or the fiscal policy side. There are people who say, I think there's a St. Louis Fed report, that you could have a break-even rate, which is the rate that's required to keep the unemployment rate steady, of just 50,000, which means within the tolerance you could do zero. How weak do you judge the job market is right now?
I think that the St. Louis estimate is reasonable. I mean, I've seen estimates of 50, 80,000, something like that. Certainly it was, I think, around 80 to 90,000 before the pandemic. And we know immigration has cut the labor force growth by a lot. But we're also hearing, this is where the anecdotes of all the businesses that we talk to come in. We're not hearing many anecdotes of businesses hiring. We're not hearing a lot of firing, which is good news, but it's more one of everybody's cautious. Everybody's on pause. And I think if they're on pause for an extended period of time with not hiring and not firing, it's somewhat of a fragile labor market is how I would look at it. And so I think the cut that we did this week and that the cuts that we could do for the balance of this year, I look at them more on insurance to just keep the labor market from falling dramatically. while it takes time for the underlying inflationary dynamics to play out over the course of the next year or so. So I think it's not a bad labor market, but it's one that I think we need to pay a lot of attention to.
Neel, I want to try a question out on you, which I think is a legitimate question in the following way. You guys don't like to comment on politics, but you do say that you take the administration fiscal policy as it's given to you. The administration now and Congress have passed this tax cut. One of their big criticisms of the Fed is your failure to incorporate what they believe will be a supply-side boom that will be non-inflationary growth. Should the Fed be incorporating that more into its outlook and say, you know what, because all that capital investment is coming, we can afford to be looser on policy? And is that a failure? Is that a political decision on your part, I mean the FOMC's part, not to incorporate that in your outlook?
Well, I think it's certainly possible that that's true, and I certainly hope that it, in fact, proves to be true. I put more weight on the forecast of the economy that I have a lot of confidence in. I talked about housing inflation, for example. We can map lease growth a year or two forward, translating into housing inflation. That's what gives me, lease growth has really plummeted back down to pre-pandemic levels. That gives me a lot of confidence that housing services inflation will continue to fall. What are these pro-growth dynamics of the tax cut? You know, if we end up having a lot more capital investment, by the way, that likely will push up R star. And that likely means we have less room to cut before we get back down to neutral. So I'm not against it. I hope it's true. I hope we see a booming economy and a huge productivity surge. But forecasting that with confidence, it's hard for me to do that. And you can't just say it's pro-growth and it's not also going to boost R star. I mean, if some of these things move, other things move along with them. And that's why I think it's prudent to be cautious before we fully assume that they're going to happen.
What's amusing about that, Neel, is I asked AI what kind of impact AI would have on interest rates, and AI told me it would, at least in the short term, raise interest rates because of the capital needs. So you're backed up by that. What about AI, though, Neel? I want to get a final word from you. Are you guys preparing for this notion there could be, I mean, especially when it comes to white collar and new grads and people coming out right out of college now and having trouble getting work? What is the Fed policy response in that context?
I mean, I think we're watching it. It's going to affect, just like the immigration flows. We know immigration, just as an example, the immediate closing of the border has dramatically changed the break-even rate of job growth, just as you talked about. My guess is the AI effects on the labor market are going to be much slower than that. You know, I'm bullish on AI, but I also remind myself that 5 or 7 years ago, all the bullish talk about self-driving cars and trucks told us that they said all the long-haul truck drivers were going to be out of work in a few years. That's not remotely been true. That doesn't mean that self-driving cars are not eventually going to get here, but usually these things take a lot longer than the proponents suggest. So I'm bullish on AI. We have to watch it carefully. But so far, I'm not seeing evidence that it's affecting the labor market as much as other policy developments are affecting the labor market.
We have to go, Neel, but real quick, what did you think of your colleagues' Dot calling for 350 basis point rate cuts?
You know, we have 19 participants with a wide range of views, and everybody's contributing to the discussion.
Neel, thanks for joining us this morning. Neel Kashkari, Minneapolis Fed President.
Thanks for having me.
Joe, what do you think? You satisfied?
He's got a good...
Got a riff, right?
Yeah, he's...
Yep.
I feel calm.
Confident
listening.
inflation's coming down?
How do you feel about him saying that this meeting was, the remarkable part about the meeting was how unremarkable it was?
It's a good line.
We did go in with some people estimating you could have an 8-3-1 vote.
Right.
8 for a quarter, 3 for 50, maybe 1 dissenting. And Powell pulled it together. I'm really not sure if that's how important that is. He thinks that's important. I don't know if I should second guess him on that, but it's an interesting question. Why not have an 8-3-1 vote if that's what people want to vote? He thinks it's important for the Fed, I guess, institutionally, to show consensus.
But it also just sounded like it wasn't that dramatic. I mean, I would have thought if you were going into a room like that, there'd be conversations about what's going on with Lisa Cook.
That's just
people would be talking about Steve Moran.
Right? Like Myron. That spread the blame.
It's Bernanke rhymes with Yankee. Myron rhymes with Byron. I don't know.
There you go.
We're going to spread the blame
We're
around.
going to be talking to him
9-0.
We're talking to him later, you know.
Today?
Byron.
Awesome.
On another show.
Next on Squawk Pod, today is the day maybe, for the future of TikTok. President Trump and China's President Xi are set to discuss the terms of a deal that would avoid a U.S. ban, passed by Congress, of the popular video sharing app. Cybersecurity expert Krebs on the long limbo for the future of TikTok.
Month after month of extension of not enforcing the law. And there are some remaining questions of whether this deal itself actually addresses the requirement included in last year's legislation.
You're listening to Squawk Pod from CNBC. Today with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Up and Andrew, Q.
President Trump and China's President Xi, they are due to speak today on trade and TikTok. It's going to happen this morning. On Tuesday, the president extending that deadline for ByteDance to divest TikTok's U.S. business. Join us right now on the national security implications of a TikTok deal. I want to bring in cybersecurity expert Krebs, who served on the inaugural as the inaugural director of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Good morning to you.
Morning.
TikTok has been the sort of chess piece in this sort of larger trade negotiation for quite some time. Obviously, Congress decided also quite some time ago that it represented a national security threat. I'm curious as to whether you still believed it. Do you believe it was a threat to begin with, given that if so, we've been living with that threat for now over a year and a half, and whether the solution that's being proposed you think solves that threat?
Yeah, first off, Andrew, thanks for having me on. Look, I believe TikTok poses a risk. I think anytime you have the Chinese Communist Party with their thumb on the scale of the national conversation, particularly here in the U.S., it's a big risk. And so the Congress, as you pointed out last year, said, hey, we need full divestiture of TikTok if it's going to remain a going enterprise in the United States. And that's what we kind of see manifesting, at least today. But it has been, to your point, month after month of extension of not enforcing the law. And there are some remaining questions of whether this deal itself actually addresses the requirement passed in the included in last year's legislation.
And so does it?
Well, it remains to be seen if that would actually be enforced. But no, I don't think that the deal itself, as it's been described and as we may hear later today, fully complies with the law. The law is clear. It requires a complete divestiture of TikTok from ByteDance from China. And as the deal has been described, there's a 20% hard cap, or 19.9% by ByteDance. So no, I don't think that complies. But that's not to say that there's not other good stuff in the deal. And this is without question progress. It is no more kicking the can down the road, but it is data security, privacy for users. It is a reduction of influence, but there are some lingering aspects like the ownership portion by ByteDance. And I think the real sticky wicket here is the algorithm itself. Who's developing, maintaining, deploying the algorithm that frankly determines what you see, what any user sees on the platform?
Look, I've always thought, and maybe you're going to disagree with me, I've always thought that to the extent TikTok represents a threat, it was always a prospective threat, which is to say that the government, if it so chose, could use TikTok in some nefarious way in the future. But that there has never been any evidence thus far that they actually did in a meaningful way. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, look, so first things first, on the legislation itself, the intelligence community went in and briefed the entirety of the House Intelligence Committee as well as the broader House, and it was a unanimous vote in favor of the bills. So there was something in that briefing that we have not seen that I think, frankly, should be declassified, or at least portions of that released, to let us know what so scared the House. The second is that the Department of Justice has alleged that ByteDance or TikTok officials have gotten down at the device level on journalists that have used the platform. So there's I think been some perhaps bad activity, but yeah, there is also a bigger specter of the manipulation factor that the algorithm presents that we need to be focused on, particularly at a time where information warfare, it's not just about cyber attacks, it is the information warfare and manipulating viewpoints across the national conversation.
Chris, let me ask you a separate technical question. It really goes to the question, and it's not really, this is not national security at all, but it's technical, which is One of the things we're all hearing is obviously this is going to get moved over to this Oracle. It's already at Oracle, but some of this, the algorithm is going to get transferred and this and that, and it's going to take some time, and you might actually have to download a new app and all of these things. Do you think that TikTok will ultimately have the same kind of success that it's had thus far, or is this going to become a diminished product? Is this a big win for a Facebook and an Instagram, obviously owned by Meta?
Yeah, I don't know, right? We'll see. I think anytime that you force someone to add or download a new app, that you're going to see some disruption in the kind of transition from the old thing to the new thing. Branding remains same. You have the same experience. I suspect that you're going to have probably a pretty good chunk of the deal. I don't know if to the average U.S. consumer or user, who owns or who runs the platforms, frankly, a matter of concern. I think it's to the national security community that we were just talking about, where the real, like, hey, is this good enough?
Right.
Who's doing the trust and safety work, content moderation, and the algorithm? That's going to be the big question.
Okay, now I got a big philosophical question for you to weigh in on. And maybe I can't put it in the context of national security in its own strange way. Joe and I were having a big debate this morning about free speech, about what's happened in the last week. Obviously, we're talking about Jimmy Kimmel on ABC, but we're also talking about social media. Do you think that there is any kind of groundswell anywhere in the country to change the laws around speech and responsibility, if you will, on these platforms? This goes to Section 230 and everything else, given the sort of remarkable polarization that we have in this country, and clearly the extremes and the nature of these tools, if you want to call them that, or apps, seems to be pushing people even farther apart.
Look, I mean, you absolutely hear a desire for something to change, but I am not picking up on any uniform or unified viewpoint of what that is. I think just like everything else, the national conversation is so incredibly polarized right now. And I think if you really want to kind of have the proxy conversation here, is how would a piece of legislation like that either changes 230, Section 230, or changes something else when it comes to the First Amendment, how would that get through a Congress, let alone this Congress? So no, I don't think anything's likely anytime soon. There's not a whole lot of clarity in Washington, D.C. on what's next from a big legislative package perspective. So I think we're kind of stuck with what we got for at least the next 18 months, maybe even a little bit longer.
I just think there's both sides really do agree that something is amiss.
But both sides have tried it. That's the scary
when it comes to when it comes to what's happening on social media. And by the way, I think you could do it where you're not even going at free speech per se. I mean, even if you could get rid of bots, I mean, which obviously is something Elon Musk was trying to do or said he wanted to do when he was trying to buy X originally. Even if you get rid of just sort of the bots that are pushing things around. This goes to some of the national security issues, Chris, because I think people have a view that either China or Iran or others are somehow manipulating these tools. If you could get to a system where at least you knew that there were real people behind all of these things.
But if there was objective truth, maybe you could. But when it's subjective truth, you know what? I remember what that administration decided shouldn't be on Twitter, and now I'm looking at what the other administration decides what shouldn't be on Twitter. They're like not the same thing, and that I think that's why absolutists say anything. You know, it's a slippery slope. You don't want someone deciding what you're allowed to see, because depending on it could change every 4 years, Chris.
Look, every one of these platforms has the technical capabilities to reduce the presence of bots on their platform. About increasing transparency on what's an ad, what's being promoted. We've seen time after time over the last several years of these foreign influence campaigns that are paying users, paying influencers, in fact, to go and push a certain narrative. That can all be preempted on platform by trust and safety teams. But at the same time, we've seen a decrease in investment of trust and safety over the last couple years. So the term trust and safety itself has been demonized. So we've got a lot that I think the platforms have the ability to do. They're just not doing it. And I think if we're resting our hopes here on the Congress to get in and meaningfully intervene, then we got a long way to go here.
Well, unfortunately, it's not just bots that are evil. People themselves are you allowed to say that person should be taken out? Are you allowed to say that on Twitter?
I don't know. You're allowed to say it on cable? It might have just happened.
No, I'm not
a threat.
Saying any particular person, but are you allowed to say something like that? This person is terrible and something should be done about it. Are you allowed to say that still? I guess you probably could because no one's watching, are they?
Trust and safety teams in the past have come after that sort of language and either suspended people or kicked them off platform.
They do. Okay.
Yeah, they do.
But they just kick them off the platform. They're still
right. But is the issue, Chris? And this goes to such an interesting question: is we went from a period where the social media companies at least were ostensibly saying that they had trust and safety teams. Maybe they were and doing all sorts of things. Maybe they were pretending, I don't know, to now effectively saying we don't even do trust and safety because that unto itself could upend the idea of free speech, right? I mean, that's the distinction about this moment. And I don't know whether the public wants trust and safety teams. I look at it and would think I do. And yet I also am cognizant that I think some of those trust and safety teams and some of the pressures that were being brought to bear has actually led to even more polarization in the country.
Yeah, look, I think you're right. I think in some sense, the teams are kind of making this up as they go along because this is still brand new, effectively, technology. We're a decade plus maybe into some of these platforms. And they're continuing to develop what their policies are, what implementation looks like.
Chris, it's nice to see you. Thank you for your perspective and for waking up early with us.
Yep.
A lot of folks are going to be at that Apple store with
You're not
Tim
going
Cook
over.
and Jim Cramer.
You're not going?
I'll head over. I need to buy myself a phone.
That's Squawk Pod for today and for the week. We all made it to Friday. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern. Follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. Tell a friend to follow too. We'll meet you right back here on Monday. Have a great weekend.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.